Yo, what's good, YouTube? It is your host, AG Samurai, and welcome to the channel. I'm here to bring you another part to What If Deku Was His Reincarnation, as you guys seem to enjoy it. And so, here's another part to it, part 10. You guys have been amazing with showing the support here, as this What If series has been blasting off. And honestly, I'm really glad that you guys have been enjoying it so far. For the up and coming next What Ifs, I already got them planned out. I just want to tell you guys know one last time, as I already have the thumbnails ready. I'm already having the scripts ready, and they're ready to be released. But I want to finish the What Ifs I have currently, then move on to the next one. It's how I roll, right? And also, I'll be for the next other What Ifs and for the next future What Ifs, I'll be changing the way I tell the story. You know, trying to add less detail into it, trying to get straight to the point. You know, actually having parts to pause on instead of just continue going until I feel like I can't go any longer. So there will be a part to that. But besides that, guys, thank you all so much for the support. And once again, this is part 10. So either way, it's your host, and let's begin.
You're never gonna make it, you're not good enough. There's a million other people with the same stuff. You really think you're different, man, you must be kidding. Think you're gonna hit it, but you just don't get it. It's impossible, it's not probable, you're irresponsible. Too many obstacles, you gotta stop it, yo. You gotta take it slow, you can't be a pro. Don't waste your time no more. Who the fuck are you to tell me what to do?
Alright, guys, let's begin this What If. Hopefully you guys do enjoy. And besides all that, let's begin. Alright, so we now start off with the days after the events of both Deku and Bakugo's fighting. Now, early on during the day, they end up having an announcement at UA where they pretty much start talking about the incident and pretty much how they're going to keep much tighter security around the entire area, which is understandable. After all, they did break school rules, so of course they're going to update the security. Plus, with all the villains roaming around, it's kind of obvious. And after that, we also end up hearing about the internship from Aizawa, as after everyone in Class 1A gets returned, they end up talking about how things are going to go back to their normal schedule, and they're going to start, looking forward to the internships, as this will be making them do hero work outside of UA. And as he says this, though, he does give a small glare to Deku, as even though Deku had earned his license, the man was doing it way too early on. And honestly, that should have been suspended. But at the same time, you can't really fault the boy. I mean, with his powers, he's the one who's getting the attention. He didn't ask for it. But besides that, and after giving them their final warning, he would then dismiss the class, as everyone would then go on with the regular activities. Deku, while doing so, would actually go back to cleaning and doing his training, as him and Bakugo were still on punishment, so they still had to go through it. However, as we now turn our attention to Deku as he was taking out the trash, we am seeing Deku actually have an encounter with Mirio as he pops out of the wall right beside him. You really are one interesting kid, you know that? At this, Deku, who already sensed his presence, would then nod his head. And you as well. At this, Mirio would then give a smile as he then hops out of there. And he had a smile on his face as Deku would look him directly in the eyes with a blank expression. So are you going to put on clothes or not? This would cause Mirio to look down and to realize that, yeah, he didn't have his clothes on, which was embarrassing, as we now do a miniature time skip to afterwards. So after finding some clothes, Mirio would then suddenly begin to talk to Deku, saying that he's been really intrigued with the boy's performance, and honestly asking Deku what is his training regimen and everything, with Deku giving him vague answers, while also beginning to speak to him about his abilities and his quirk. Now this would actually cause both of them to have some type of, I wouldn't say that they instantly become friends, but they were good acquaintances to each other. They enjoyed each other's company. As of course Mirio being used to Asa's intimidating presence. I mean, he already knows some people like that. But in the end of the day, he got used to it. With Deku actually being intrigued and honestly kind of inspired by Mirio slightly, considering the fact that the boy, his quirk isn't exactly all that good. Don't get me wrong, phasing through attacks is pretty busted, but the way it works in My Hero, it's honestly kind of dangerous. You could legit. All the air inside your lungs can legit vanish, and it's terrifying. What if you black out and the quirk is still activated? It gets me thinking of that sometimes. But still, the way that he was able to actually get used to his quirk by trial and error, Deku was like, dang, I respect you, man. But after that talk, they would then go off their separate ways, as this is when Mirio then actually states that he's actually really excited to fight Deku, to which Deku would then agree. However, as he does, Mirio does end up muttering, to which Deku ends up hearing it. I can't wait for the next day. This is going to be so exciting. As Deku would actually begin to wonder what he meant. Which is when we now do a time skip to the next day, where we end up finding out what he meant, As in the very next day, this is when Aizawa then introduces the rest of the big three. Now, mind you, no one in Class 1A really knew about the interaction between Mirio and Deku, and the only one who probably has like even a small bit of a clue was probably shoot. Oh yeah, Ida. Sorry, I'd be forgetting these characters' names sometimes. Sorry. But either way, that was just besides it. As this is when everyone's actually surprised as they heard about these guys. As Mirio would then instantly lock eyes with Deku, as both of them would then stare down at each other. Now, while doing so, this is when suddenly then get introduced to the rest of them, as Tamaki, then, being Tamaki, who was intensely stare at them, with Nijiri just asking a bunch of questions before she then turns to Deku. Hey, you're that good friend of Mirio's. Man, your abilities are really strong and powerful. It's honestly freaky how can you just teleport all around. As she will begin to like blabber and, begin to speak about Deku's abilities and everything, but Deku pretty much just ignores her. As after that, Mirio then gets the bright idea as he then challenges everyone in Class 1A, causing everyone to be shocked, but Deku just nods his head, already knowing where this was going. So as we need to move forward, Mirio would then once again get into his stance as he faces off against everyone in everyone in Class 1A, sorry. I accidentally made a mistake right there. Moving on. As everyone was right now in their like gym suits, Mirio would then have a smile on his face as he instantly knew who he was going to go for. I probably should take care of the biggest one here, he would say. As right now, first things first was probably to take care of the strongest fighters first, then go after the weak ones, considering the fact that those ones are going to be the ones to give him the most problem. So as Mirio would then get into his fighting position, this is when suddenly the fight would then begin as Mirio would instantly blitz into action, falling into the ground. This would surprise everyone, but Deku, already knowing where this was going, within sight, he would then hear the streaks of golden lightning. Here he comes. At this is when suddenly Mirio would then appear right behind Deku with a backhand as he tries to hit Deku, but Deku would then have a smile on his face as this is when suddenly Mirio's attack would then phase right through Deku. What? Is my quirk activated? No, but that can't be. As Mirio tries to come up with the reason why his hit didn't, affect Deku, he would instantly be flipped over by Deku, causing him to be surprised as he would look directly into Deku's eyes to see that Deku had actually, hold his arm while he was still in solid form. I recommend you throw all reason and logic out the window when it comes to fighting me, cause trust me, you have never faced someone with my power before. Deku would say this with a smirk, as Mirio would then suddenly fall into the ground, and Deku would let go of his arm as it phases right through him. And this is when suddenly the rest of Class 1A would then actually gasp, but they didn't actually even see what happened. What happened? Where did he go? He was just here for a few seconds. As everyone wondered exactly where Mirio went, this is when suddenly multiple members of Class 1A would then begin to fall over as they hold their stomach in pain. Mirio in this instant actually activated One for All, and he activated to 5%. And with this, he began to speed blitz most if not all the classmates, hitting all of them in the stomach so that way they can get knocked down in an instant. Okay, maybe I should focus on the weaker ones first, then I can tackle him. He's gonna need all my attention, Mirio would think, as he begins to knock out every single member of Class 1A, with the ones who are actually able to keep up with his speed not being able to hit him at all. Dang it. How are we supposed to hit someone who legit can't be hit at all? Todoroki would think as he tries shooting a ginormous flaming ball at him, but unfortunately Mirio ends up phasing through it and ends up hitting him in the stomach, knocking him out. At this, he ends up doing this for the rest of Class 1A before finally he ends up leaving Deku as being the last and sole survivor of this onslaught. As just like that, Mirio would then suddenly phase out of the ground as he had a ginormous smile on his face. I guess it's just you and me, huh? Man, I've been excited for this ever since yesterday. Come on, let's go, Mirio would say. At this, Deku stays there, looking at him with a blank expression as his eyes were analyzing everything. Fine then, so be it. After hearing these words, Mirio has a ginormous smile on his face as he powers up One for All the way up to the most percentage he could use, this being a total of 85%. At this, the golden lightning sparks began to spark dangerously all around, as the ground itself was getting destroyed just by the pressure he was emitting. However, unfortunately for Mirio, he gave Deku all he needed for victory. Instantly, as soon as he did, time began to slow down around Deku as Mirio was powering up, as in that split instant that Mirio was powering up One for All, Deku was already in range. Sorry, come back to fight me when you have more experience. But until then, this is my win. As this is when suddenly Mirio would then be hit all around as his pressure points were damaged. He couldn't exactly phase through at this very moment as Deku was moving way too fast, and while he was powering up, he was in solid form. So with that being said, Deku ends up hitting him and hitting those pressure points in an instant. As we now turn back to the present, as just as Mirio had powered up one for all, he would then suddenly end up crashing down, unable to move his body. Uh, I can't move, he would say with a sweat drop coming down his forehead. As you will see Deku just casually standing there right in front of him. It looks like it's my win, senior, Deku would say as he stares down blankly at Mirio, as he can do nothing more but actually just be amazed in Deku's strength. I couldn't even react. This guy, he's totally on a different level. Man, this is amazing. As Mirio was, instead of being disillusioned or being upset that he lost, he was honestly feeling very happy. This means that there's still more challenges out there. Even with One For All, even with having All Might's quirk, it was still not enough when he tries to compete with people like Deku. And he can do nothing more but actually feel proud of that. As this is where we now have, that small little intervention as they start cleaning up everything after everyone in Class 1A ends up recovering from their wounds, besides Deku as, he was fine completely. The rest of the class actually end up hearing about Mirio and his explanation about why he's so strong, as he pretty much explains that in the end of the day, it's up to them to really decide how strong they want to be, as long as they push themselves and test the limits of their abilities. And after hearing this, Class 1A gets way more inspired to push themselves even further, as after all, they're all striving for a goal, and they might as well give it all they got so that way they could reach it. As after these following events, we can now move forward. So after this, Class 1A now gets a large amount of time to reflect on their internships, and things go by pretty similar to canon. The only difference here is that Deku does not go to Night Eye, and the reason for this one is pretty similar. Well, pretty much the same. He doesn't have One For All. And instead, thanks to the fact that Mirio is already working under his partner, this is even more convenient to All Might, so Deku doesn't even mix up with them. However, there is one thing that does end up happening, is the fact that Deku ends up working for Edgeshot, considering the fact that, they already worked well together once. It's better to work together again, Besides, Edgeshot and Deku are way more compatible when it comes to, being teacher and student than really anyone else I could really think of at this moment. So with that, Deku ends up working for Edgeshot, who's actually really happy about this, considering the fact that Deku was pretty much like a prodigy, his protege right here. So of course he was going to be happy about it. So for the next following days, Deku ends up working for Edgeshot, and these following days he does nothing more but recon and spy missions along with him, as that was mostly, his department right there. He would usually end up spying, collecting information on villains, and due to this, end up finding more and more about them. This is where Deku actually ends up picking up on more and more information. This being the fact that he ends up hearing reports about villains end up grouping up, where you see two villains who usually don't even end up working together, work together in certain situations. Now, of course, they do end up, going out and, like collecting bad guys, putting them in jail. That's still the norm, but most of the time it's just, to spy and collect data and information. As eventually during these following days, the rest of, Class 1A, they also begin to make their own achievements. As, for example, Kirishima, his moniker known as the Red Riot was actually spread far and wide after he sort of handled a hostage situation. And he did it really well. And also unlocked a new technique, which caused the rest of the classmates, to cheer on him, to cheer for his accomplishment and everything. However, during these following days, though, this was suddenly Deku, as he was walking, he would then run into a very miserable Mirio. Now, of course, seeing this, Deku ends up walking over, and this is when he finds out about the whole Eri situation. Now, apparently during that time, Mirio had just been calmly walking on patrol thanks to Night Eye's permission, and while he was doing so, he ran into the little girl whose name was Eri. He was then approached by none other than Overhaul, aka Shisaki, which he began to explain that, she was just nothing more but his daughter, and also the fact that, she just been recently a little bit punished considering the fact that she behaved bad. Now, of course, as much as, Mirio wanted to do something against him, they didn't have enough information to really prove that he was guilty, so if he were to take action, they could pin the blame on him, and that could look very bad for him, so he couldn't really do anything in the situation. However, that didn't mean he wasn't upset, so this ended up causing him to turn out the way he was right now. Now, of course, hearing this, Deku then thinks about it, as he then asks Mirio what he plans to do about it, to which Mirio ends up explaining about the whole area operation and how they plan to actually rescue her. Now, hearing this, Deku actually ends up getting invited to participate, considering the fact that, well, he is the kid who went up against, well, All For One. And even though as much as they try to hide it, they can't. After all, it was a live event. Many people had seen it from far away, or at least destruction that, both of them had caused. And the ones that Deku had saved had pretty much been nearby to see the whole thing. So already Deku has this man was already some people are already looking at him as if he was a hero already. And heck, some people are even saying that he's the next contender to be number one. So of course Deku was invited to this one. So after this, we now turn to the following day of the operation, as we see a bunch of these high class heroes as they begin to explain about the whole what they're planning to do, how they plan to get her. And when it comes onto the topic about how Mirio actually encountered her, this will cause a hero known as Rocklock, which, by the way, not gonna lie to you, I thought his name was Rock Lee for a few seconds. I was like, whoa, isn't that copyright? But I just, moved on. But after finding out, Rocklock was actually not very convinced of bringing kids on this mission, considering the fact this was a real deal. All right, this wasn't just some school activity where they can just play around. No, this was a real deal, and he didn't like the idea of these kids coming along. But of course, people like Fat Gum and Edshot, who also was actually attending this mission. After all, there was no way he was just gonna let his student just wander in there. Heck no. He would also begin to actually give the gratifications, stating that, in all honesty, and he says this completely honestly, he tells Rocklock that Deku, if it came down to a fight, or it came down to any situation where it involves rescuing people, or really doing anything when it comes to any situation, Deku would guarantee obliterate him in any contest. Now, of course, hearing this, Rocklock wasn't very happy, but in the end of the day, he can't exactly argue, as after all, having a bunch of these heroes gratification plus with Deku's achievement on blast almost every day, this would of course end up having him no way to argue. So yeah, unfortunately they're coming along, or maybe not. Fortunately, who knows? So moving on to the following day, we eventually end up seeing a bunch of the heroes currently right now holding out outside of the base as they're ready to storm in. All right, they're not playing these little games. So instantly, we now turn to the very scene itself, as we see all of the heroes, including Deku, as well as the Big Three, and pretty much the rest of the heroes who are participating in this one. You'll see them currently right now gathering at the basement, where we see a bunch of members of the organization stepping out as they tried to fight them off. But this, of course, was a big fail, considering the fact... Sorry, I ate a lot of food. Considering the fact that Sun Eater of the Big Three would instantly end up obliterating him due to the power of his quirk. We also turn to a different location as we see Kirishima, as he was currently right now running along with Fat Gum, as they were currently right now heading to the next destination. As the team that they had formed, they attacked from different fronts. So due to this, we currently see Kirishima's team as they currently arrive to a certain location where they see two men there. Now, of course, this would cause them to get into a fight with these two, and the fight was difficult, but the events still go similarly to canon, as thanks to the power of Red Riot, you will see the power of Kirishima, as he's able to actually withstand the heavy blows and help Fat Gum in defeating all these men right there. Now, I do want to give a little bit of, I want to give a little bit more information. For example, people like Twice and Toga, who helped in the canon, since the fact they're in jail, they can't exactly help. So we're just going to replace them with a bunch of random but yet powerful villains. But at the same time, they don't really do much. They still, in the end of the day, get defeated. So yeah, they just continue on. This was way easier. However, Deku began to realize something as while he was running along with Rocklock and also Mirio, then realizing that the room was morphing or changing. Whatever it was causing the path to be very difficult. Luckily for Deku, or better yet Hit, thanks to his many experiences, as well as the fact he is able to manipulate his ki, he's able to sense someone else in the room and also sense his precise location. Alright, I had enough of this, Deku would say. As this one suddenly, the floor itself began to, lift him up, as Deku would instantly point his finger out, and actually focus on a very narrowed area before suddenly shooting out a small purple beam out of his finger and honestly striking someone, causing the person to wince out in pain and reveal his location. This will be mimicked as Deku, seeing this, would instantly move as he uses the power of time skip to appear right in front of the man and knock him out in an instant. Seeing this, Rocklock can do nothing more but look on in shock, but also be a little bit, jealous. I guess I underestimated him, but dang it! I mean, his abilities are way more powerful than I even anticipated. Is he really a kid? He would say, as he couldn't understand Deku, and I mean, heck, he's not the first, but still, Deku does not act like a kid. He acts like an adult, and honestly, it terrifies him. As while doing this, Deku also begins to see more and more villains end up appearing, as he then turns to Mirio, telling him to go on ahead, saying that he can deal with everything here. Seeing this, Mirio nods as he activates One for All and blitzes over to the front. And as he does, this one suddenly, after defeating a few more villains, he ends up running into none other than Overhaul, and along with them, his henchman, Chrono. Now, of course, seeing this, instantly Mirio powers up. No way. Last time, I have to admit, I couldn't do anything. However, this time I won't fail. I'm stopping you here and now, Mirio would shout as he activates the power of One for All, pushing his quirk to the utmost limit he can, before suddenly dashing off and disappearing. Now, this would surprise Overhaul, and let me just say this: Overhaul had trouble against Mirio before he had, One for All. Now he's fighting him with One for All. I'm just gonna say this right now: Overhaul does not stand a chance. As instantly blitzing, of course, the henchman of Overhaul tries to stand in the way of Mirio, but Mirio in an instant appears right in front of him, knocking him out, saying that he was not the one he was after. Now, this will cause the henchman to fall down, as Mirio will then once again sink into the ground, and faster than Overhaul can anticipate, Mirio will get to the location of Eri and actually grabbing hold of her before getting her away from Overhaul. As I said, I'm not failing this time. Overhaul, seeing this and seeing how quickly he moved, would then get pissed off. I guess I've underestimated him. It doesn't matter, because in the end of the day, nothing will stop my goals and ambitions. Besides, you're not the one I'm really after. As Overhaul would think this, he would then suddenly tap on the ground, causing a bunch of rock spikes to appear. As of course, Mirio, seeing this, would instantly think about using cremation, but as he does, he would then realize that Eri is in his arms. If I use my quirk, she would end up taking the blow. Due to this, Mirio then decides as he activates the power of One for All, jumping up into the air, dodging the generous, spiky rocks. As he does, he'll then use a Detroit Smash, destroying more and more of the ground around them. As of course, seeing this will cause Overhaul to begin to laugh. You're powerful, I give you that much, but how long can you endure? After all, with limited surroundings and you having to protect that girl, you're at a very, very large disadvantage. But Mirio, hearing this, would then scoff, saying that no matter what, he wouldn't give up. As this one suddenly he does something shocking, as he actually kicks the air at full force, causing him to actually move around through the air, almost as if he was flying. Now, of course, seeing this, Overhaul gets pissed off as he tries and tries. However, unfortunately, Mirio was either destroying the rocks that he creates or literally just dodging out of the way of them. However, while doing this, though, this one suddenly his henchman would then suddenly end up actually pulling out a gun as he was trapped under the rubble that Overhaul had created. I will fulfill my purpose to the master. Those will be his final words as he will then suddenly pull out the gun, as he then shoots out a bullet directly at Mirio, as he was casually casually up in the air dodging an attack. Now, due to this, and due to the fact that, the presence of the bullet is very small, and also the fact that he didn't hear the henchman because of all the destruction that was happening, Mirio did not see this bullet approaching him. As the bullet was approaching, Overhaul, seeing this, wouldn't have a smile on his face, as Mirio was just casually, beginning to fall down, wondering why he wasn't attacking. As the bullet edged closer and closer, however, this is when suddenly In an instant, the bullet would then be caught by 2 fingers and getting crushed. We'll be having none of that now. At hearing these words, Mirio's eyes would then widen as appearing right in front of him was none other than Deku. As this man was casually right there wearing his, hero equipment and everything, as he casually caught the bullet, which would have made Mirio lose his quirk. Now, due to this, Mirio doesn't end up losing his quirk, and this will end up causing like a lot of shock to go through, as the henchman of Overhaul would then suddenly end up passing out as he dies due to the fact he was still being crushed by the rubble. And now, due to this, we end up turning our attention to, Overhaul now, as he sees himself being face to face with 2 people that he did not want to go up against. First was Mirio, of course, as he had heard about the man. After all, it was stated in a news report that him and All For One were the first ones on the scenes. And now he was also facing off against Deku, who, do I even need to explain to myself? This man went up against All For One. No matter how much the Hero Association tried to cover it up, they can't. No. And after all this, wait a minute. I thought they were going to be way more useful. Why? Where are they then? At this, something was not making sense to Overhaul. Was he betrayed? This didn't make sense. As we now do a flashback. On one certain day, as Overhaul was just casually, about to do his regular daily experiments on Eri, so he can finally accomplish his dreams, his ambitions. This is when suddenly he ends up getting a call. Now, of course, this was informed by the henchman, as he says that the League of Villains were actually calling for him. Now, this will confuse him. The League of Villains, that was odd, considering the fact that All For One was in jail. So, due to this, he ends up picking up the call. He ends up hearing it and actually beginning to speak to the man. The man, who sounded like an old elderly man, begins to explain that his master, aka All For One, had pretty much stated that he would actually like to go into business with, Shisaki. However, he does tell him that while he does end up helping Shisaki must do him a favor in return. And hearing these words, Shisaki actually ends up exploiting this idea, thinking that it was going to be very great. Considering the fact, if he were to use this to his opportunity and actually manipulate this one, he can end up getting all the resources needed to finally complete his ambitions. So he decides for now to agree with it. As this is when, of course, due to this, they end up helping him first, as that was the part of the agreement, as they had to help him first. As we now turn back to the present. But this help they didn't help me at all. As the villains that they sent out weren't even exactly like high class ones or famous ones. They were just slightly more powerful than the average nobody villains. But if this was all it, then what the heck were they even talking about? So now moving back, we currently see Deku as he was staring down at Overhaul, who currently right now had a very complex expression. But this one suddenly he would then hear Mirio as he turns to him. I want you to hold on to her for now. I'm ending this, Mirio would say as he had a serious tone. Now, of course, hearing this, Deku would nod his head as Eri, seeing Deku would actually, be more frightened as she holds on to, Lemillion, telling him that she doesn't want to let go. But this is when Deku will then begin to release this calming energy. It was very different to what he usually releases, shocking, both, Mirio and the little girl. As this is when suddenly Eri actually relaxes around Deku before finally actually allowing him to hold on to her. Now, while seeing this happen, although Mirio had many questions, he was still happy to see it, as he then turns his attention back to Overhaul, getting serious. After everything you've done, it's finally time for you to pay for your crimes. I'm ending this now. With a burst of speed, Mirio then charges forward towards Overhaul with a cry, as he then suddenly throws a punch, to which Overhaul ends up dodging out of the way. Now, this is where the fight between the two happens, and let me tell you right now, this fight was amazing, as both Overhaul and Mirio then go at it, but instead of Mirio being at a disadvantage since he lost his quirk, this time Mirio didn't lose his quirk, and now also has that amp from One For All. So with all these stacked together, Mirio was like dogging this man as Overhaul couldn't do anything to him. Before some people start commenting but Overhaul has his quirk and everything. Tell me right now, even without the quirk, Mirio was still like beating on this man Overhaul. However, as Overhaul was getting beaten up, he tries one more attempt as he tries to merge with his henchman, which I don't exactly know what his quirk is, but I do know is that it did give Overhaul more limbs, and due to this, Overhaul had actually gotten a stronger buff. But even with all of this, I don't believe he's going to be able to beat Mirio, especially this overpowered version of him. So due to this, Mirio ends up beating on Overhaul, and Overhaul is actually unable to do anything, as Erie's unable to do nothing more but watch everything. Actually feeling, not happy, but she was actually, feeling relieved that everything was finally coming to an end. As with the 100% Detroit smash, Mirio would finish off Overhaul as he gets slammed down to the ground and causing ginormous destruction all around the entire base. As Mirio would then look on with a happy smile on his face as he looks down at the defeated Overhaul before suddenly extending his fist in the air, similar to how similar to how All Might did to All For One after their battle in canon, by the way. So with that, but due to this fight though, Mirio was extremely exhausted as he could no longer move. As just as he was about to collapse onto the ground, Deku ended up catching him, telling him that he did a good job. I finally did it. I saved her. At this, Deku would nod as Eri would then actually, she would actually ask Deku to put her down, to which he would do so, to which she would then run over to Mirio before giving him a hug. Now, this will be a very heartwarming moment, as this is when suddenly the rest of the squad begins to arrive. Night would eventually end up arriving as he ends up seeing everything and is also surprised before looking at Mirio, who's currently right now exhausted. He really did it. At this, he nods his head as he had a smile on his face. While doing so, we also see Aizawa as he walks over to Deku, and he was actually about to speak up to him and actually talk to him and discuss about the event. How while doing so, Deku's senses begin to go off. Move. At this, Deku would then suddenly end up activating the power of time skip as he ends up moving everyone out of the way, just as a ginormous fist and slam onto the base. Now, this would end up causing everyone to actually, have a bunch of dust kick up as sunlight begins to fall into the base that was supposed to be underground. Now, we now turn our attention to the outside as we see Uraraka's squad as all of them are currently right now hiding away with tears in their eyes as they're currently right now watching as Riku, the number 10 hero, was currently right now being crushed by a ginormous arm as she right now was looking at the gang, telling them to run as she currently right now was falling unconscious due to the pain. At this, Uraraka would then look on as she would then see a bunch and hordes of villains begin to fall around as they all begin to walk towards the location. In a different area, we then see in his cell laughing like a madman, we will see All For One. Karma, it truly is a fascinating thing, isn't it, Midoriya? Or should I say hit? After all, if you think you can just stop me and walk away, you're dead wrong. As this is when we then see Deku as he walks out of all the dirt that was kicking up from destruction of the roof. He would then walk out to see none other than a group, and I mean groups of villains all around, with Raikou currently right now being unconscious and bloody. And finally, he would then look up to see none other than Gagento Makia, as he was currently right now standing above Deku, as All For One's laugh can be heard booming out of the cell like a madman. As Deku was surrounded by all fronts by powerful villains, as each one of them were given an order by, the leader, as this was his final order, right before getting captured. Take out the new hero himself, Hit. As we see all these villains surrounding Deku and everything, Deku will look at it all with a grain of salt as he watches everything, almost as if this was nothing more, but he sees this all on a daily basis. But seeing all these heroes here, all these villains here, he wonders exactly how they even appeared. As he does though, this one suddenly he then ends up hearing the warping sound as he sighs. I should have known. As soon as we see him appear, we will see him currently right now brooding on his usual suit, except for the fact that he seemed to have taken on a little bit more amped, as he seemed much buffer and he looked deranged. Well, more deranged than usual, as long as you see someone with a literal hand on his face. As you see Shigaraki in his cloak as he pulls up along with the rest of the villains, and accompanying him was none other than Kodagiri. Now, Deku was actually surprised by their appearance, but that doesn't change the fact, as now seeing him surrounded, Deku wouldn't have a smile on his face. Well then, bring it on. As Deku then takes a step forward. What do you guys think of the final battle that's about to occur right now? Overall, what do you guys think Deku's chances is against with all these villains here? And overall, when do you guys think that this man, Sage D Samurai, is going to post another part, as he always and continuously always got something to do? It's your host, Sage D Samurai, and he's ending this part to this what if. Hopefully you guys do enjoy. Oh my gosh, guys, I am so sorry, because let me tell you right now, I had a ginormous struggle in doing this final part, but not for the reason that you would think. Everything else, like I did this part like 2 times, and I keep messing up, and I was so confused until I realized one thing. I forgot about Shigaraki. I know. This man is supposed to be the main, well, I mean, debatably he could be the main villain, but still, this man is supposed to be like a key part of the story. Yeah, I forgot about him. I forgot about him near like the forest camp training arc, and I was so confused. I didn't know what to do. And so finally, I ended up finding out about him. And don't worry, there will be a reason as to why Kodagiri and Shigaraki's appearance and everything. I will go into it, but at the same time, I also need to find up a way not to, spoil too much, considering the fact that, some of this, I don't want to get into too much of the topics because it's going into spoilers and everything. So I'll be giving some vague explanation in the next part, but there will be reasons, okay? There will be reasons. But besides that, guys, thank you all so much for your support. I really do enjoy making these what if for y'all. Don't worry, next time I make a what if, I will be making, as I said, since the next future what ifs are coming up, I'll be making some changes to how I tell the story, so I can actually remember things and how things can go by much more smoothly. But besides that, guys, it's your host, and I'm ending this part here. Thank you all so much, and see you next time. Peace.